For privacy reasons, names and places have been changed. This story is inspired by true events.
In the spring of 2014, hopeful newlyweds Priya Nair, 29, and Ethan Lowell, 31, set out on a once-in-a-lifetime self-drive safari honeymoon deep within South Africa's vast Greater Kruger region. They were never seen again. Their rented SUV, detoured onto a forgotten maintenance track, was later discovered abandoned and mysteriously locked in a dry, seasonal riverbed. Priya and Ethan had vanished without a trace, swallowed by the unforgiving wilderness, despite an exhaustive initial search effort. For 10 agonizing years, the families of Priya and Ethan endured the torment of not knowing, clinging to the slim hope that justice or answers might one day surface. Then, a decade after their disappearance, a new technological frontier delivered a chilling breakthrough. Groundbreaking aerial drone imagery captured disturbing clues previously unseen by human eyes. This is the complete investigation into what truly happened to Priya Nair and Ethan Lowell. Before we continue, let us know where you're watching from, and if you enjoy this content, consider liking and subscribing to our channel. Now let's continue. In the year 2014, the vast untamed expanse of South Africa's Greater Kruger region beckoned Priya Nair, 29, and Ethan Lowell, 31. They were newlyweds, full of the boundless optimism that accompanies the start of a shared life, embarking on what was meant to be the adventure of a lifetime, a self-drive safari honeymoon. Their itinerary promised intimate encounters with nature, the thrill of the wild, and the quiet solitude of a landscape largely untouched by human development. The Kruger, a mosaic of acacia woodlands, thorny scrub, and winding seasonal riverbeds, presented an alluring tableau of wild beauty. Yet it was a beauty underscored by an ancient, untamed danger, a place where the food chain remained unbroken and the elements held ultimate sway. Its very remoteness, while part of its irresistible charm, was also its most formidable characteristic, where nature reigned supreme and human presence was a fragile, temporary intrusion. Their journey began like countless others, following marked routes through the private conservancies bordering the main national park. The early days were filled with the expected wonders of the African bush. However, at some point, their intended path veered, whether by navigational error, spontaneous curiosity, or an overlooked faded sign. Their rented SUV transitioned from the established tourist track onto a lesser-used maintenance road. These tracks, often barely discernible, overgrown, and challenging to traverse, crisscrossed the expansive landscape typically reserved for park rangers or conservation workers. It was a subtle deviation, one that in hindsight would prove catastrophic, leading them deeper into an area less frequented and less monitored. Days later, the alarm was raised not by the couple themselves, but by their failure to arrive at their next scheduled lodge and their complete silence. A search commenced, focusing on their last known coordinates and expected route. What was eventually discovered sent a profound chill through the small interconnected community of safari operators and rangers. The rented SUV was found, not on a main thoroughfare, but deep within a seasonal riverbed, its wheels mired in the soft, silty sand. The vehicle itself was locked, its windows intact, and no signs of forced entry were apparent. Inside, their personal belongings remained, seemingly undisturbed. Cameras, travel documents, a half-eaten snack. All were present, a testament to a sudden, unexplained departure. But Priya Nair and Ethan Lowell, the excited honeymooners who had set out with such high hopes, were nowhere to be found. The discovery ignited an immediate wave of panic and profound confusion. An abandoned, locked vehicle in the heart of the unforgiving wilderness, with its occupants vanished without a trace, transformed what should have been a joyous occasion into a chilling, inexplicable mystery, the first unsettling chapter of a decade-long enigma. The report of Priya Nair and Ethan Lowell's abandoned vehicle and their sudden disappearance triggered an immediate, intense response across the Greater Kruger region. Park authorities, private conservancy operators, and local police converged on the scene, initiating a vast search and rescue operation. Helicopters were deployed, their rotors slicing through the morning air, while ground teams, comprising experienced rangers and tracking specialists, fanned out across the riverbed and surrounding bushveld. Every effort was made to capitalize on the crucial initial hours, when any trail might still be fresh, and the chances of survival, however slim, were highest. Despite the urgency, the terrain itself presented an immediate and formidable obstacle. The Greater Kruger is an immense wilderness, its dense mopane and acacia thickets providing endless cover, its undulating landscape concealing countless depressions and gullies. The seasonal riverbed where the SUV was found, a labyrinth of soft sand and reedy banks, offered little in the way of discernible tracks, which were quickly obliterated by wind or the passage of wildlife. Potential hazards were ever present. The threat of dangerous animals, from lions to elephants, meant search teams had to proceed with extreme caution, often slowing their progress. The absence of any witnesses near the site of the locked vehicle, coupled with the lack of any clear struggle or sign of forced entry, left investigators with no immediate leads. Authorities grappled with a spectrum of possibilities. The most benign, yet still tragic theory was that Priya and Ethan had simply become disoriented after leaving their vehicle, perhaps seeking help or a better vantage point, only to succumb to the harsh environment or an accidental fall. Another grim possibility was an unfortunate encounter with one of the region's formidable predators, a scenario that, while rare, was not unheard of in such wild territory. However, the locked vehicle, seemingly undisturbed, also raised the more unsettling prospect of foul play. Had they been lured away or forcibly removed by human actors? Each theory carried its own chilling implications, but none had definitive supporting evidence. Among the seasoned professionals leading the ground search was Ranger Saifo Kumalo. With decades of experience navigating the intricate pathways of the Kruger, Kumalo possessed an unparalleled understanding of its topography, animal behavior, and the subtle signs left by both humans and wildlife. His intimate knowledge of the local environment was invaluable as he directed teams through treacherous terrain, scrutinizing every broken branch, every disturbed patch of earth for any indication of the couple's path. Kumalo and his trackers worked tirelessly, their expertise tested by the baffling absence of a clear narrative. Days bled into weeks. The initial intensity of the search gradually gave way to a growing sense of frustration and despair. Despite the unwavering efforts of hundreds, the vastness of the Kruger seemed to swallow all traces of the Honeymooners. No footprints led away from the vehicle that could be definitively attributed to them, no personal items were found in the bush, and no distress signals had been sent. The relentless search yielded nothing but empty miles of wilderness. Priya Nair and Ethan Lowell had simply vanished, leaving behind only an abandoned vehicle and an agonizing, unanswered question that echoed through the silent bush. The initial surge of hope, fueled by the swift deployment of resources and the expertise of seasoned rangers like Saifo Kumalo, began to wane with each passing day. As weeks turned into months, the relentless searches across the Greater Kruger yielded nothing but the vast, indifferent wilderness itself. Ground teams meticulously combed every square kilometer, drones flew overhead, and local communities were canvassed, yet no credible sightings, no discarded personal effects, and no definitive tracks emerged to guide the investigation. Every potential lead, from vague reports of unfamiliar vehicles to speculative theories about rogue wildlife encounters, was pursued to its logical conclusion, only to dissolve into the overwhelming silence of the bush. The evidence at the vehicle, initially so perplexing in its absence, offered no new revelations. The locked doors and undisturbed interior continued to confound investigators, suggesting a departure that was either voluntary yet inexplicable or forced, yet without overt signs of struggle at the immediate scene. For the families of Priya Nair and Ethan Lowell, the protracted silence was a torment far worse than any confirmed tragedy. They clung to the faintest glimmer of hope while battling the crushing weight of uncertainty. Each phone call, each news report was met with a desperate expectation, only to deliver another confirmation of no progress. The agony of not knowing whether their loved ones were lost, injured, or victims of a more sinister fate consumed them. This profound, unanswerable question became a permanent fixture in their lives, a void that no amount of time or sympathy could fill. The initial media frenzy surrounding the vanished honeymooners gradually subsided, replaced by the grim reality that the case was stagnating. Eventually, With all viable leads exhausted and the immense cost of the continuous operation becoming unsustainable, a heartbreaking decision was made. The active search and rescue efforts were formally scaled back, then ultimately suspended. The file on Priya Nair and Ethan Lowell's disappearance was not closed, but it moved into the somber category of cold cases, a haunting, unsolved mystery within the South African wilderness. It became a chilling reminder of the Kruger's untamed nature and the human vulnerability within it. The case, once a subject of intense national and international attention, faded from the daily headlines, relegated to the archives of unsolved disappearances. A long, silent decade followed the events of 2014. The seasonal riverbed where the Lowell's SUV had been found continued its ancient cycle of flood and drought, erasing and reshaping the landscape. The dense reeds grew, withered, and regenerated, holding their secrets tight. The greater Kruger region, indifferent to human tragedy, continued its timeless rhythm of life and death, predator and prey. For 10 years the mystery endured, a persistent, chilling question mark hanging over the memories of Priya and Ethan, their fate unknown, their absence a perpetual ache for those they left behind. The case remained dormant, awaiting an unforeseen catalyst, a new perspective that might finally pierce the impenetrable veil of time and wilderness. A long, silent decade followed the events of 2014. The seasonal riverbed where the Lowell's SUV had been found continued its ancient cycle of flood and drought, erasing and reshaping the landscape. The dense reeds grew, withered, and regenerated, holding their secrets tight. The greater Kruger region, indifferent to human tragedy, continued its timeless rhythm of life and death, predator and prey. For 10 years the mystery endured, a persistent, chilling question mark hanging over the memories of Priya and Ethan, their fate unknown, their absence a perpetual ache for those they left behind. The case remained dormant, awaiting an unforeseen catalyst, a new perspective that might finally pierce the impenetrable veil of time and wilderness. Then, in 2024, 10 years after Priya and Ethan vanished, a new frontier in conservation technology offered an unexpected opportunity. Advances in aerial drone imagery, initially developed for anti-poaching efforts and wildlife monitoring, began to provide an unprecedented bird's-eye view of the vast and often inaccessible terrain of the Greater Kruger. These sophisticated unmanned aerial vehicles, equipped with high-resolution cameras and thermal imaging, could systematically survey immense areas with a precision impossible for ground teams or traditional aircraft. It was during one such routine mapping exercise, not specifically targeting the Lowell case, that a significant anomaly was detected. Pilot Hendrik Botha, an experienced drone operator with a keen eye for detail, was reviewing footage captured over a particularly remote section of the seasonal riverbed. His task was to identify changes in vegetation or potential signs of illegal activity. As he meticulously analyzed the mosaic of images, a distinct pattern emerged, one that stood out against the natural contours of the landscape. The drone footage revealed a series of clear, parallel indentations on the riverbed's sandy surface. These were not the tracks of wildlife, nor the eroded scars of floodwaters. They were unmistakably drag marks, leading from a point where a vehicle, consistent in size and shape with a stalled SUV, had once been situated. The marks extended with unnerving clarity for several meters, disappearing into a thick, almost impenetrable cluster of reeds that lined the riverbank. The discovery was astonishing. 10 years of conventional searching had yielded nothing, yet here, from hundreds of feet in the air, was a tangible physical clue, preserved by the dry conditions and overlooked by every previous ground effort. The drag marks, so subtle from eye level, were undeniable from the drone's elevated perspective. They suggested a deliberate movement, a forceful displacement of something or someone from the vicinity of a vehicle into the concealment of the dense reeds. This single image, captured by a machine designed for an entirely different purpose, instantly reignited the cold case of Priya Nair and Ethan Lowell. After a decade of silence and despair, the drone's eye had offered the first concrete hope for answers, transforming a forgotten file into an active investigation once more. The revelation from Hendrik Botha's drone footage instantly shattered the decade of dormancy surrounding the Priya Nair and Ethan Lowell disappearance. The cold case, once a file relegated to dusty archives, was dramatically reactivated. What had been a perplexing absence of evidence was now a compelling, if still enigmatic, lead. A new team of investigators, equipped with resources and techniques unavailable in 2014, descended upon the Greater Kruger region, their focus narrowed to the specific coordinates identified by the aerial imagery. The seasonal riverbed, once meticulously but fruitlessly searched, became the epicenter of a renewed, technologically informed inquiry. Forensic specialists, armed with ground-penetrating radar, laser scanners, and advanced chemical agents, began a painstaking analysis of the drag marks. Their objective was not merely to confirm their existence, but to understand their depth, consistency, and any microscopic traces they might have collected or disturbed. The soft, silty sand, while prone to shifting, also possessed properties that could preserve impressions over time, especially in areas protected from direct erosion. Every millimeter of the identified trajectory, from the presumed vehicle position to where the marks vanished into the dense reeds, was meticulously documented and sampled. This was no longer a general search for a missing couple, but a targeted excavation of a specific, critical event. To interpret the complex interplay of environment and evidence, ecologist Carla Van Zyl was brought in. Her expertise in the Greater Kruger's unique ecosystem was invaluable. Van Zyl possessed a deep understanding of the region's soil composition, the life cycles of its indigenous flora, and the behavioral patterns of its wildlife. She could assess how 10 years of floods, droughts, and animal movements might have altered or, crucially, preserved the scene. Her insights helped investigators differentiate between natural disturbances and potential human intervention, providing context for the degradation or retention of physical evidence over such a prolonged period. The reeds themselves, a dense, almost impenetrable barrier, became a primary focus, their growth patterns and root systems potentially shielding vital clues. The passage of a decade, however, presented formidable challenges. While new technology offered unprecedented precision, it could not fully overcome the ravages of time. Environmental degradation had undoubtedly occurred, washing away some traces, burying others. Traditional forensic evidence, such as footprints or perishable biological material, was almost certainly lost. Memories of initial responders had faded, and the landscape itself had subtly reshaped. Yet the drone's discovery offered a tangible starting point, allowing investigators to bypass the initial aimless searching and concentrate their efforts on a specific, high-probability area. The new investigation expanded beyond the initial vehicle location, now following the silent aerial lead directly into the heart of the reed beds, where the drag marks had so disturbingly disappeared. The reinvigorated investigation, now tightly focused on the drone-identified drag marks leading into the dense reeds, pushed forward with methodical intensity. Weeks of painstaking work within the riverbed, often under the watchful eye of ecologist Carla Van Zyl, yielded its own set of challenging discoveries. Among the tangled roots and sediment, a small, waterproof action cam was meticulously recovered. Its casing was encrusted with years of riverine debris, but its internal memory card, against all odds, remained intact. The footage, once painstakingly extracted and restored, offered a chilling, fragmented glimpse into the final moments before the couple's disappearance. It showed Ethan and Priya initially vibrant and joyful, then a sudden halt, a brief moment of confusion, and then a jarring struggle, the camera falling to capture only a chaotic blur before silence. The exact nature of the confrontation remained obscured, but the evidence of a violent incident was undeniable. Almost concurrently, a separate, seemingly unrelated avenue of inquiry began to converge. Carla Van Zyl, leveraging her deep knowledge of local wildlife and ongoing conservation projects, suggested re-examining data from GPS tags fitted to a specific population of vultures in the Greater Kruger. These tags, primarily used for tracking migration patterns and ecological health, also recorded precise locations where the birds had spent extended periods, often indicative of a food source. Analyzing the historical data from 2014, a pattern emerged. Several tagged vultures had repeatedly congregated over a concentrated period, not directly at the abandoned SUV, but a few kilometers downstream, in a particularly secluded section of the river system. The convergence was striking. The action cam footage, though visually ambiguous, contained faint audio cues and environmental echoes that, when analyzed, pointed towards the same general direction as the vulture activity. Guided by both the restored action cam data and the precise GPS coordinates from the vultures, investigators pushed deeper into the remote river system. Their search led them to a hidden oxbow lake, a secluded bend in the seasonal river that had long since been cut off from the main flow during dry seasons, becoming an isolated, almost forgotten pocket of wilderness. Its dense vegetation and difficult access had ensured it remained untouched by previous searches. At this hidden oxbow, the long-sought answers began to materialize. The ground bore undeniable evidence of a struggle zone: broken branches, scuffed earth, and remnants of vegetation that had been forcibly disturbed. Forensic teams meticulously documented the scene, uncovering fragments of personal effects consistent with Priya and Ethan's belongings, alongside other more unsettling traces. This discovery provided the critical context needed to re-evaluate the initial investigation. Old reports of tire impressions found some distance from the SUV, previously dismissed as unrelated or belonging to search vehicles, were now re-examined through the lens of the oxbow's grim revelations. With the new understanding of the struggle and the location of the oxbow, those tire marks once misread suddenly made chilling sense, indicating a path not of rescue, but of a deliberate, forced removal. The pieces of the decade-old puzzle were finally falling into place, constructing a horrifying narrative. The convergence of all evidence finally painted a chilling, coherent picture of the events that unfolded 10 years prior. The stalled SUV in the seasonal riverbed, a seemingly innocuous breakdown, became the initial point of vulnerability. The recovered action cam clips, though fragmented and chaotic, confirmed a sudden, violent encounter at or very near the vehicle. Priya and Ethan, caught unaware, had been forcibly taken. The distinct drag marks identified by the drone footage then traced their brutal journey from the stranded SUV through the concealing reeds and towards a waiting vehicle. This vehicle, whose tire impressions were initially dismissed, was now understood as the means by which the honeymooners were transported deeper into the remote wilderness, away from any immediate chance of discovery or rescue. Their final known destination was the hidden oxbow, a secluded pocket of the river system, where the struggle zone bore stark witness to a desperate fight for survival. Here, amidst the broken vegetation and disturbed earth, the full horror of their ordeal became tragically clear. The combination of the action cam's final distorted images, the vulture GPS data indicating a prolonged presence, and the physical evidence of a violent confrontation definitively answered the agonizing question of how Priya Nair and Ethan Lowell vanished. It was not a tragic accident of the wild, nor a simple case of getting lost. It was a deliberate, violent act, culminating in their forced removal from the oxbow, leaving no trace for a decade. For the families, the revelation, though devastating, brought a profound and complex form of closure. For 10 years, they had grappled with an unbearable void, haunted by endless possibilities. Now, the grim truth of what transpired, however painful, replaced the paralyzing uncertainty. The details were harrowing, but the knowledge provided a foundation upon which to begin the long process of mourning. This resolution was a testament to the relentless pursuit of truth and the transformative power of modern technology. Drones, once primarily tools for surveillance, became airborne detectives. Vultures, ancient scavengers, inadvertently served as biological markers, their GPS tags guiding investigators to a forgotten crime scene. These innovations, combined with the enduring dedication of individuals like Ranger Sifo Kumalo, ecologist Carla Van Zyl, and pilot Hendrik Botha, breathed life back into a cold case, demonstrating that even the most formidable wilderness cannot forever conceal its secrets. The tragic fate of Priya and Ethan Lowell served as a stark reminder of human vulnerability in the untamed world, but also of humanity's persistent resolve to uncover the truth, no matter how long it takes or how deeply it is buried.